I don't usually read emails out loud before I decide whether to use them. This one I read 3 times before I got to the end. Then I closed my laptop and didn't open it again for 2 days. The woman who sent this calls herself Denise. She lives in Macon, Georgia. She has 1 child, a son. He's 11 now. He was 9 when this happened. She wrote this 14 months after the night she's describing. She says she waited because she needed to be sure her son was okay first. She says she's still not sure. She asked me one thing before I posted it. She asked me not to use his real name. I'm calling him Marcus. I want to start with something people need to understand about Marcus before I tell them what happened. He was born with a digestive condition, gastroparesis, partial. His stomach doesn't empty right. Since he was 3 weeks old, we've been in and out of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, managing it. He's been on medications his whole life. He knows more about his own body than most adults know about theirs. When he says something feels wrong, it's wrong. He doesn't dramatize. He never has. I'm telling you this because what happened that night. I need you to understand that his body was already a place where strange things happened, where things moved through him that shouldn't and didn't move through him when they should. I need you to understand that so you understand why it took me so long to recognize that what was happening to him was not his condition. It looked like his condition at first. That's the part I can't forgive myself for. December 3rd, 2021, Friday night. We live in a rental house on Napier Avenue in Macon. It's not a good neighborhood and it's not a bad one. It's a tired one, the kind of block where everyone's working too hard to notice much. My neighbor to the left is an older woman named Mrs. Fret who keeps her porch light on all night. My neighbor to the right is a man I've spoken to maybe 4 times in 2 years. The houses are close together, but the walls are thick in the way old houses are thick. You don't hear anything unless you're listening. Marcus had been off for 2 days before the 3rd. Not sick exactly, quiet. He'd come home from school on the 1st and gone straight to his room, which he sometimes does when his stomach is bad. He didn't eat dinner. He drank the ginger tea I made him and went to bed at 7:30. On the 2nd, he was the same, quiet, pale around the mouth in the way he gets. I kept him home from school. He slept most of the day. On the 3rd, I asked him if he wanted me to call Dr. Osei. He thought about it. Marcus actually thinks about questions before he answers them. He's been like that since he could talk. And he said, "Not yet. It feels different this time." I asked him what he meant by different. He said, "It's not my stomach. It's something inside my stomach." I thought he was describing the same thing in different words. Children do that. I gave him his medication, made him soup, put a movie on his laptop. At 9 p.m. I checked on him, and he was asleep with the laptop still open. I went to bed at 10:30. I woke up at 1:17 a.m. I know the time because my phone was on the nightstand and the screen was lit up. I'd gotten a text from my sister in Augusta. She works night shifts and forgets about time zones even though we're in the same one. The text was nothing. A meme. I looked at it, looked at the time, put the phone down, and then I heard Marcus, not crying, not calling for me. A sound I don't have a word for. Low, rhythmic, coming through the wall between our rooms. I got up. His door was closed. I always leave it open an inch so I can hear him. It was closed all the way. I opened it. The room was dark except for the laptop screen. The movie had ended, and it was sitting on the streaming service menu, that dim blue light. Marcus was in his bed. He was sitting up. His back was to me. I said his name. He didn't turn around. I said, "Marcus, baby, are you okay?" He stopped making the sound. The silence was worse than the sound. I crossed the room and came around the side of the bed to face him, and I need to stop here for a second. I've written this part 11 times. Every time I get here, I stop. My therapist says I don't have to include it. But I think if I don't include it, I'm not really telling the story, I'm just telling the outside of it. So, his eyes were open, both of them, wide open. The laptop light was hitting them directly, and there was no contraction. His pupils were fully dilated in direct light, completely black. I know what my son's eyes look like. I have looked into my son's eyes 10,000 times. These were his eyes, and they were not right. His mouth was open slightly, not in distress, slack. The way a mouth looks when the person attached to it is not present. And his stomach was moving, under his shirt. Not the way a stomach moves when you breathe. Lateral movement, something moving across the surface of his abdomen from right to left, slowly. Like, I keep coming back to this image and I hate it, like something turning over in its sleep. I put my hand on his shoulder. His skin was cold, not sick cold, not fever broke cold. Cold like the window glass in January. Cold like he'd been outside. I said his name again. I said it loud. He turned his head toward me. Slowly. In the way that a person turns when they've been told to turn but don't know why. And he said, in his voice but in a register I had never heard from him. Lower, flatter, the way a voice sounds when it's being used carefully. It's still learning. I want to tell you what I did next, and I want to be honest about it. I stood there. I didn't pick him up. I didn't call 911. I didn't run to Mrs. Frett's house. I stood at the side of my 9-year-old son's bed, and I could not make my body do anything at all. I've talked about this with my therapist for a year. She says it was a trauma response. Freeze. She says it's the most common response and the one people feel the most shame about. She's right that I feel the shame. I'm not sure she's right that it was just trauma response. Because here's what I remember about those minutes. And I think it was minutes. I think it was between 3 and 5 minutes that I stood there. I remember that I was thinking. I wasn't blank. I was thinking very clearly. I was making lists in my head of what I should do. Call 911. Wake Mrs. Frett. Get him in the car. Call Dr. Osei's emergency line. I made those lists and I stood completely still. It was like the thoughts were in one room and my body was in another room and the door between them was locked. I have never in my life experienced anything like that. I have been in bad situations. I grew up in situations that required me to move fast, and I always moved fast. I am not a person who freezes. That night I was a statue. He got out of bed. Not like a sick child gets out of bed. No adjustment period, no sitting on the edge. He moved from lying to standing. In one continuous motion, the way. I've tried to find the right comparison. The way something moves when it doesn't have to think about how to move. He was standing in front of me. He was looking at me. He said, "She can't call anyone." Not to me. I understood immediately that he was not talking to me. He was reporting to something I couldn't see or hear, giving an update. I heard myself make a sound, not words, just air leaving my body. He walked past me, out of the room, down the hallway. I heard him on the stairs, steady even, no hesitation in the dark. And then I heard him in the kitchen. I don't know how long it took me to follow him. When I got to the top of the stairs, I could hear something in the kitchen, not movement, sound. A low, irregular sound that I can only describe as wet. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a kitchen at 1:30 in the morning. The kind of sound that makes the hair on your arms do something before your brain catches up. I stood at the top of the stairs for a long time. Then I went down. He was standing at the kitchen sink, his back to me again. The faucet was running, cold. I could tell from where I stood, no steam. His hands were under the water. The sound was coming from him, not his mouth, lower, from his torso. That low, wet, rhythmic sound. I said, "Marcus, come away from the sink." He turned off the faucet. He turned around. His face was my son's face. Every feature exactly right. But the expression was wrong the same way the voice had been wrong. Not his expression. Something wearing his expression. Something that had studied his expression and was applying it carefully. He said, "It's cold in here." In his normal voice. His actual voice. His 9-year-old voice that I would know anywhere. I said, "I know, baby. Let's get you back to bed." He looked at me for a moment, that studying look, and then he nodded and walked past me toward the stairs. I followed him up. I followed him into his room. I watched him get into bed. I pulled the blanket up. He closed his eyes. I sat on the floor next to his bed with my back against the mattress, and I stayed there until the sun came up. At 6:15 a.m., he woke up and said he was hungry. Not unusual for him after a bad night. Sometimes his appetite comes back hard after his stomach resets. I made him eggs. He ate them. He asked if he could watch TV. I watched him eat. I watched him watch TV. He was Marcus. Completely, entirely Marcus. Laughing at the same things, making the same faces, asking for juice in the same way he always asks for juice, that particular slightly wheedling tone he uses when he thinks I might say no. At 8 a.m. I asked him how he felt. He said, "Better. My stomach's way better." I asked him if he remembered waking up in the night. He thought about it. That real thinking pause he does. He said, "I had a weird dream. I dreamed I was really thirsty, but the water kept getting colder and colder, and there was something in the water with me." He said it the way children describe dreams, half interested, half already moving on. I said, "What kind of something?" He said, "I don't know. It was dark, but it was trying to figure out if it fit." Then he asked for more juice. I want to stop here, because I did something after I received this account. I reached out to a pediatric gastroenterologist. I'm not naming her. She spoke to me informally. And I described Marcus's presentation as Denise described it. The cold skin, the pupil dilation, the abdominal movement. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, None of that is consistent with gastroparesis presentation. Not even a severe episode. I asked about the pupil dilation specifically. She said, fully fixed and dilated pupils in a conscious child who is moving and speaking is not a medical presentation I have encountered. She said, that's not something that happens. I asked what would cause it. She said, I'd want to rule out toxic exposure first, then neurological event. Then, she paused. She said, I don't have a third category for what you're describing. I also called the non-emergency line for the Bibb County Sheriff's Office in Macon. I asked if there had been any unusual calls from the Napier Avenue area in December 2021. The dispatcher was helpful. She searched. She said there were no calls from that address in December 2021. Then she said, and she said it in a way that suggested she wasn't sure why she was saying it. She said, there's a note on this address though, from February 2022, welfare check request, unfounded, requested by she paused. A reverend somebody, I can't read the handwriting. Note says child reported unusual symptoms resolved. I asked who the reverend was. She said the name was illegible. I asked what church. She said, it just says affiliated, Napier Corridor. That's all it says. I've spent 2 months trying to find a church on or near Napier Avenue in Macon with a reverend who made that call. I found 3 churches. None of them have a reverend on staff. All 3 are led by pastors. I asked each pastor if they'd made the call. All 3 said no. Back to Denise. I need to tell you what happened 3 weeks later because I think it's part of the same thing. December 28th. Marcus was better. Fully better, or what I thought was fully better. Eating, sleeping, back at school, back to being himself. I'd half convinced myself that what I'd seen was a severe medical episode that I'd misread in the dark and in fear. I'd convinced myself enough to stop losing sleep over it. On the 28th, I was doing laundry. Marcus was in the living room. I went to pull his sheets off his bed and I found something under his pillow. A cup. A plastic cup. One of ours. From the cabinet. A red one with a faded Georgia Bulldogs logo. Half full of water. Cold water. I touched it. Ice cold. The kind of cold that means it had just been filled. I had not put it there. Marcus had not asked for water. I stood in his room holding that cup for a long time. Then I did something I've never done before or since. I took the cup to the bathroom and I looked at the water under the light. The water was clear, but at the bottom of the cup, settled at the center, a thin, dark residue. A ring, circular, maybe the diameter of a quarter. I poured the water out. I washed the cup 3 times. I threw it away. That night I asked Marcus, casually while he was doing homework, I asked if anything had felt weird lately, with his stomach, with anything. He said no. I said, you'd tell me, right? If something felt wrong. He looked up from his homework and looked at me in the way he looks at me when he's deciding how much to say. He said, Mom, it left. I said, what left? He said, the thing in the dream. I told it to go and it went. I asked him how he told it. He said, I just said I didn't have enough room. He went back to his homework. I went to the kitchen and I sat down on the floor because my legs stopped working right, and I stayed there for a while. Marcus is 11 now. He's fine. His condition is managed. He sees Dr. Osei every 3 months, and the last 2 visits have been the best numbers he's ever had. His stomach is functioning better than it has since he was born. His doctor mentioned it at the last visit. She said, "Whatever you changed, keep doing it." I haven't changed anything. Marcus doesn't talk about that night. I've brought it up twice, gently, and both times he's looked at me with that considering look and said, "That was a long time ago." He's 11. December 2021 was not a long time ago, but he's okay. He's healthy, and he's himself, and he gets good grades, and he asks for juice in that wheedling tone, and he laughs at his shows. I'm sending this because I need someone else to know it happened. Not because I need an explanation. I stopped wanting an explanation a long time ago. I'm sending it because of the cup. I threw it away. But 2 days after I threw it away, I found a different cup. A blue one, not ours. A cup I had never seen before, on the kitchen counter. Half full. I threw that one away too. I haven't found another one. I check every morning. I found one thing I want to share. There's a Facebook group, closed group, about 340 members, called Pediatric Unexplained Symptom Families. It started in 2019. The administrator is a woman in Tulsa whose son had a similar episode to Marcus's when he was 7. I requested to join. I was admitted after a 48-hour waiting period. I've been reading back through the posts. There are 14 accounts in that group that describe a variation of the same thing. Child with a pre-existing digestive condition. Nighttime episode. Behavioral changes during. Pupil abnormality. Spontaneous resolution before morning. 14 accounts. Spread across 9 states. Every single account mentions the cold. Every single one. The children range in age from 5 to 12. Different conditions, different medications, different households. One detail appears in 11 of the 14 accounts. Not all of them, but 11. A cup of water found afterward. I asked the group administrator about it directly. She read my message. I watched the scene receipt appear. She didn't respond. I sent a follow-up 3 days later. The day after I sent the follow-up, I was removed from the group. The group still exists. I can see it from the outside. The last post visible from the outside is from October 2024. It's from a woman in rural Kentucky. It says, "My daughter is doing better. She told me this morning the cold feeling is gone. She said it just needed somewhere to rest for a while." There are no replies.